everyone. We are so glad that you took some time to join us today for our What's New in Winter 22 webinar with Provar. So we also want to thank our amazing partners at Flosum, and we're going to be learning more from them today. What else can you expect today? Before we dive into that, let's take care of a few housekeeping rules, y'all. Y'all who are tuning in live here today, let's take some time to really get live and situated here. So I know that y'all are working and attending these events. Maybe take that cell phone, put it on snooze, Slack, notifications, put those on snooze too. Let's connect live, and we're going to learn so much today, y'all. Really excited about this lineup. We have our Salesforce testing experts are going to break down the Winter 22 release notes with key highlights. We're also going to give you a sneak preview of some new and exciting innovations here at Provar, and we're going to deep dive into our new upcoming integration with Applitools. Y'all are not going to want to miss the Q&A that we're going to have at the end of this event. We're also going to have some networking too. So if you want to connect with other leaders in our space as well as other attendees, please stick around after this Q&A because we're going to have some networking going on for y'all. And again, in the spirit of networking, feel free to drop any of your LinkedIn or Twitter or any kind of social media handles that you have in the chat, because we're all here about making connections. And also, speaking of that as well, we are going to have a Q&A, but if you're listening to any of the talks today and you want to ask more, go ahead and drop a question in, okay? We're going to make sure that we try and get to all of your questions, and if we can't, we're going to continue the conversation and our networking as well, but please feel free to drop your questions in as well. You can also upvote as well. I know. It's all very exciting. With that said, y'all, my name, I know, rude, is Tristan Lombard, Director of Community at Provar, and I'm just so excited for you all, whether you're tuning in live or you're watching this recording. We are thrilled to have you. And with that said, really excited to introduce an amazing conversation between Samuel, our Senior Product Manager and an amazing leader here at Provar, as well as Alex, our Director of Product Marketing, about some of the Winter 22 release highlights.
Hi, everybody. Alex Sherwood here. I'm here with Samuel Arroyo Acuna, the new Senior Product Manager for Provar. He's got a ton of Salesforce experience, 16 certifications, and been a developer and an architect for 9 years. We're here to talk today about some features we found interesting in Winter 22. Samuel, where would you like to start?
Well, let's start with speed analysis and recommendations. Yeah, this is one of the features that caught my eye with the latest release. We all get frustrated when things go very slow and you start wondering if it's the internet connection or the page is slow or I just have too many tabs open. Speed is always something that we have on our minds, especially for web applications. This feature first appeared about a year ago, I think, and got some new improvements in Winter 22. One of them is that now Salesforce will automatically analyze the page performance if they suspect that it is moderate or bad. And the way that it works is that once you're looking at a page in App Builder, you just need to click on the Analyze button at the top right, and Salesforce will have a pop-up showing you an estimation of how long it will take to load the page, and also it will show the performance breakdown by component, some network-specific information, and also some recommendations about how you can actually improve the performance of the page. Now you may be thinking, okay, that's cool, but how does this relate to testing? The thing is, you could argue that if you improve the performance of a page and you're using that page on your test should run quicker.
So did you test your hypothesis?
Yeah, I actually wanted to try it out. So to summarize what I did, I created a test on Provar that just opens a page layout from the home page. I ran that test for 5 times, just recording how long it took. Then I improved the page performance on that page on the account layout, and then ran the test again. I got the average time, and it improved around 3 seconds, which was around 5% of the total time. And this was just an improvement on one page layout, which was quite simple. It wasn't that cluttered, really. So imagine all the improvements that you can make if you start improving all the different pages like case, opportunity. You can save a lot of time on your test cases.
This sounds like a great example of where focusing on the customer can actually improve testing.
Yeah, it's almost like an intended consequence of it. But you have to be careful because you may be too focused on just make it very performant and very quick. But actually, you need to think about the speed versus usability dilemma. Because if you start moving things around and adding tabs to reduce the amount of data on the page, the user experience may suffer. Anyway, here's the URL for the blog post if you're interested in the details. So Alex, what feature piqued your interest?
Dynamic interactions. This is another cool feature that's part of Lightning App Builder. It first appeared as a pilot in summer 21, and with winter 22, it's picked up some more impressive features. Dynamic interactions is all about interactions between Lightning components. An event occurring in one component, like hovering over a record or clicking a button, can update other components on the page. So how does it work? First, a developer defines and publishes any events they want to tie to a Lightning Web component. Call that the source component. Next, with Dynamic Interactions UI, admins can pick a source component, add an interaction, pick the target component, and define what happens to the target component when the event's triggered. In this screenshot, we're in Lightning App Builder. The right-hand column is the Interactions tab, and we're adding an interaction on a list view. Specifically, when the new case button is clicked, the list view changes to display cases with the list filter set to all open cases. The lack of code required to deliver this kind of interaction is amazing. Add to that the ability to use standard components, third-party or ISV components, all without making any changes, and you begin to see what a popular feature this is going to be for developers and admins. Dynamic interactions is something we expect to be used a lot, which means that you're going to be doing a lot of testing. Here's the good news. Provar is really good at building tests for Lightning Web components, and we've got some super cool enhancements coming for LWC in the next release, which we're going to be discussing right after this session, so stay tuned. Okay, moving on. What else have you got?
I think it's time to talk about flows because they are probably the main highlight of this release. And as a side note, after Dreamforce, Salesforce confirmed that they will be deprecating workflows and processes in favor of flows. So if you're thinking about building any automation on the platform, probably go for flows. And I think this fits with the strategy that Salesforce has of equipping admins with robust automation tools so they don't have to rely on code. Now let's talk about some of the enhancements. The first feature that I want to highlight is rollbacks. Developers will probably already know what rollbacks are because they've been on the platform in Apex for a long while. Rollbacks are an easy way of reverting uncommitted changes off the back of a failure or an exception. So for example, if you have a screen flow where you're inserting a contact with some related events and tasks, consider adding a rollback step in case that the tasks or events fail to insert. After that, you could, for example, show a nice error message, letting the user know what happened. Another interesting new feature is being able to call a subflow from a record-triggered flow.
Is this like callable tests?
Yeah, sort of the same idea. You should avoid big flows if possible. It's much better to move part of the logic to a subflow in order to keep it tidy. It's also easier to understand what a flow does if it's smaller. And it also helps with maintenance, and it has other benefits.
So the subflows are reusable?
Yeah, they are. That's one of the main benefits of using subflows. So for example, imagine that you have a flow that creates a follow-up task on a contact. Now you may want to create that same tasks on a lead as well. Instead of duplicating the logic, just move that part of the logic that does the creation of the tasks to a separate flow. And then you can call it from the contact and the lead parent flows. That's how you can keep complexity down and also save time.
Nice. So what else have you got for flows?
The last feature I wanted to mention is the new ability to schedule paths so that now they can start running in a set number of minutes. Before Winter 22, you could only set paths in hours or days, but not minutes. Also, before we move on, just a quick note on the new ability to customize labels in a flow screen footer button, so like the next label to go to the next screen. If the admin is planning to change those labels, just make sure that your tests are not relying on the actual text of the button, otherwise they may break. But that's enough about flows.
So we've been talking a little bit between ourselves about in-app guidance. What's the story there?
Well, user adoption is one of those things that I'm very passionate about because it's one of the biggest challenges, I think. And in my experience, companies don't usually pay much attention to this aspect. Thankfully, Salesforce has been investing in features like in-app guidance to improve user adoption. In-app guidance is exactly what it sounds like, a guided path for the user. In the screenshot that you can see there, you can see that the welcome to Salesforce pop-up will be very useful for a first-time user. Or for example, imagine that you would like to add guidance so that your salesperson understands how the opportunity page works, which is quite useful for them. With Winter 22, you can now do 3 more things. You can point to specific elements on a page with targeted prompts. You can also show specific guidance depending on the record type. And you can also create and view prompts or walkthroughs for supported pages, which is quite useful if you're trying to onboard admins.
I imagine that this is something anybody building custom apps is really going to want to take advantage of.
Oh, definitely. I think it's a great way of guiding your users through around the functionalities that you built and preventing them from feeling lost in your app.
So what are the testing implications?
That's a good question. On one hand, because this is a pure declarative tool, it can only be tested with using UI testing. So each configured guidance should have its own related test case to make sure that it's appearing where and when we're expecting it to be. On the other hand, with Provar, you won't have to worry about the prompts hiding part of the page that you're testing. That's because Provar will locate the components to be tested, even if there's a pop-up hiding them, as long as the information is rendered on the page anyway. So if you want to know more information about in-app guidance, check out the blog post where we discuss how to implement it and how to test it. Hey Alex, I think we may have time for one more feature. So what else should we cover?
Let's cover something simple. New email templates. Winter 22 includes updates to the email template builder that make it easier to do things like add rows and columns, pad columns, and expand the subject, just to name a few. This is another example of a feature that's bound to be used by admins and probably a lot of marketers that's going to need to be tested. The good news is Provar is completely set up to test email as part of our end-to-end test automation, and it's really simple to do. If you aren't already including email testing in your projects, go check out the University of Provar. There's a terrific course to help you get started. That wraps up a review of Winter 22. As always, if you have questions, come across any compatibility issues, or want to update your test to take advantage of any of these new features, just contact us. We'll make this recording available online, and if you haven't already done so, look for our Winter 22 features logs that we've been posting over the past several weeks. Thanks everybody for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
We love that, y'all. I know there was so much information coming your way. So the good news, this whole conversation has been recorded and we'll be sure to share it after the event. But definitely we'll tune in the chat. We have a whole blog with all of these referenced as well. And in the spirit of exciting updates, I am so pumped, y'all. I'm so excited about this next section we have for you. Okay, so we're going to dive in a little bit more about a Provar preview. We're going to talk a little bit more with Alex and with our head of product, David. This is going to be an insightful conversation from LWC, Fact, Mobile, coming up here at Provar. There's going to be a lot to unpack here. So remember, again, if you have any questions, y'all, drop them in, okay? The Q&A is there. And also, too, let's make sure we're continuing to connect. So feel free to drop any LinkedIn's or social media handles in the chat. I'm so excited for this next section, y'all. So without further ado, Maestro, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Alex Sherwood here with David Cook, head of product for Provar. How you doing, Dave?
Great, thanks. Hi there, everyone.
Dave's joining us today because we're going to try something a little bit different. We are going to give you a preview of what's coming from Provar. Before we get started, It's important to remember that because we're talking about the future, the usual caveats apply, which means things can change. With that out of the way, Dave, where would you like to take us?
Let's start by talking about how we've taken a new approach to LWC app testing.
All new LWC app testing, what's that about?
With our new approach, for each UI component in the LWC library, we have created completely tailored testing support.
What's an example of that?
The LWC library is the set of base UI widgets or types of fields that you use to build your custom LWC apps. An example would be a checkbox. Now, with generic testing support, you might just have the ability to click the checkbox or perhaps to read its state. With Provar's LWC app testing support, it's completely tailored for each field type. So for that checkbox, you'll have interactions such as check the box on, check the box off, or toggle the value.
So that sounds like it's going to be a whole lot easier to be a test builder testing LWC apps going forward.
Absolutely. So aside from being more intuitive, it's also more robust because you can choose to construct your test in a way that's less dependent on the initial conditions. So with the checkbox example, if you're just clicking the checkbox, suppose you intend that box to be checked on. Well, when the page in Salesforce loads, if the checkbox is already checked on and you click the checkbox, now you'll turn it off. Whereas with Provar's check the box on interaction, you can be certain that the box actually will be checked on.
Yeah, that sounds like another great example of being able to build tests that work straight out of the box. What other kind of benefits are we expecting from tailored support?
Well, because we've made the support modular for each type of component, we also have custom page weights included for each type of component.
So how would that work for the checkbox?
That would be built-in verification to make sure that the checkbox is visible and clickable before we attempt to check the box on.
So I'm looking at these screenshots and I'm seeing some interesting new UI changes in Test Builder. What's that about?
We've made two very important updates to our user experience. First of all is the new Page Explorer at the top of Test Builder. And this shows how Provar has automatically understood the hierarchy of visual LWC components in an LWC app. The visual LWC components being things like tabs, UI cards, and accordions. Within the Page Explorer, you can click on each entry and it will highlight the corresponding component in Salesforce, which gives you direct feedback and information about that component structure within the app.
Okay, Page Explorer is the first thing. What's the second thing?
The second thing is that for some types of fields where we feel it makes it more intuitive when you're doing your test authoring, the field information in Test Builder will reflect the type of field that you are testing.
What are examples of that?
With, say, a radio button in Salesforce, you'll see a radio button in Test Builder, complete with the radio button values for you to select from. Similarly, with a pick list in Salesforce, you'll see a pick list in Test Builder with the pick list values from Salesforce. Again, you choose the pick list value that you want. We feel that this continues to push the boundary of what it means to create tests in the same way that you use Salesforce, something that's right at the heart of our beliefs about how you should author tests with Provar.
So what I'm hearing is a whole lot more context and a whole lot more complete test step being delivered for a tester. So it sounds like, new users are going to be productive even more quickly. Are there any other benefits that you can think of?
So our benchmarking so far shows that the performance is an order of magnitude faster than what we've previously achieved.
That's really impressive. It looks like there's a heck of a lot of engineering going behind all this. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's all delivered through our new product architecture, which is called FACT.
So what's FACT?
So FACT, which stands for Framework for Automated Continuous Testing, is our brand new product architecture. It breaks the dependency of application release cycles and makes support for web and mobile UI frameworks and libraries more modular, agile, and scalable. LWC is the first framework that we're delivering on this product architecture, and we have many more big things planned for the future.
So can you give us a quick overview of how FACT works?
Absolutely. When you add a field to your test case in Provar, when you right-click Add to Test Case, Provar breaks down the page using its knowledge of the framework used in the app, starting with the major components that make up the page structure, such as the ones that we saw in the new Page Explorer, down to the different types of fields that make up the interactable UI elements on the page. These field types include things like buttons, input fields, sliders, or pick lists. Our first release on this framework is LWC, but we could do any framework on our new architecture, including HTML5 or Aura, for example, or mobile frameworks such as React Native. Each fundamental field type is described by an artifact, which is a lightweight JSON-based file, and this tells Provar everything it needs to know to drive the user experience for testing that type of field. So in our prior example of an LWC checkbox, the interactions, check the box on, check the box off, or toggle the value, are described in the LWC checkbox artifact.
I'm very much looking forward to this. So earlier you talked a little bit about breaking the dependency of application release cycles. What exactly are you saying there?
The artifacts, the lightweight files that describe the interactions, can be updated at runtime. And this brings a number of benefits. Firstly, we can be more agile, delivering important new functional updates in between the big Provar releases.
That's nice. And how would I get those releases?
We're working on an in-app updater that will follow soon after our initial release. What this means is that each time we make a new baseline library of artifacts available, you'll see a notification in Provar inviting you to download the latest set.
Excellent. Any other benefits we should talk about?
Yeah, as mentioned before, performance is substantially improved over what we've previously been able to achieve.
Right. Now, I'm seeing a roadmap bullet here and some line items underneath that. Can you tell us what's coming after LWC?
So after LWC, our next area of focus is going to be mobile. So Salesforce mobile app and other mobile apps within the Salesforce ecosystem.
Okay, I think that covers all of the features we were going to talk about today.
That's it.
Okay. Then the next is, how do you get involved? We are right now recruiting customers for the new LWC app testing feature. And the goals here are to prioritize support for Lightning Web Components used by our customer base. So here's your chance to let us know what you want. We want to get feedback on the UI and the UX, and we'd like to validate those performance numbers that we're seeing internally. The way to get involved is to send me an email. So reach out, send me an email, and then we will set up a quick call with the Provar product team to make sure that we understand your particular use case, meaning what are the components that you want to test and what are the end-to-end flows that you're using those components in. We'll work with you to build out a test, set up an alpha installation on AWS, and provide support throughout. So if you're interested, and we hope you are, then please send me an email and we will get you involved. So there you have it, a brief glimpse into some of the amazing things planned for Provar. Thanks a lot to Dave and the entire product team for making this preview possible. Fact is a seismic shift in how Provar is going to deliver test automation, with the LWC app testing being the very first phase. If you want to see that up close and personal, send me an email and sign up for the alpha test. So that's what's coming next from Provar. Thanks everybody, and stay tuned for updates.
Oh, hello again. It's Tristan, Director of Community at Provar, and I'm sitting today with Jen Torres, Education Manager at Provar. Hi, Jen. How are you?
Hi.
Jen, we are so glad that you're here today. And I know that there are a lot of exciting upcoming community programs coming on with Provar, but you and the team just recently relaunched University of Provar. Can you tell us a little bit more about this relaunch?
Thank you, Tristan. I'm super excited to announce the relaunch of Up on a new platform. We brought with us the Provar Essential certification, but we also offer a Provar Advanced certification now, along with electives, and we're going to be offering new courses each month. Even though we just launched our Provar Advanced certification, in 2022, we're also going to be launching a Provar Architect certification track. That is going to offer scenario-based courses that answer the when to use Provar. We're really excited about it. Now is the perfect time to get your certification and become a Provar certified professional with all of these new courses that we're offering. If you haven't gone to Up yet, please stop by and sign up today to start up-leveling your skills and become a Provar certified professional.
Jen, I love that. And that's really, really exciting and major kudos. I will say as well, y'all, we know that Salesforce is at the heart of enterprise business processes, and we know that 59% of companies are deploying a new build every day. So if you want to stay competitive in today's job market, learn about emerging tools and technologies and recommended practices, we cannot recommend enough signing up for University of Provar. So many more courses coming up. And in addition, here at Provar, we are continuously committed to giving back to our community. That's y'all. We have some exciting new initiatives coming your way soon, including creating brand new digital spaces like a customer community forum to get with other users, share recommended practices in Salesforce test automation, strategy, design, and optimize your investment in Provar through continuous learning opportunities from test automation and DevOps industry leaders. We've got some exciting new events coming just your way. And we here at Provar genuinely believe that innovation comes from hearing from the users that are leveraging our solutions and providing new ways for you to connect with our product and dev leaders and about upcoming features and more. And so we just want to say, Jen and I, thank you so much for being a part of our Provar community. Let's continue to connect, innovate, and learn together. Thank you so much, and we're so excited about this. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, I'm Ankur Laroya, Chief Strategy Officer of Flosum Corporation. Today we're going to be talking about native and what does it mean to be native and why does it matter. With multiple cloud solutions in the market, the line between native and non-native is subject to interpretation. If anything, it's gotten very cloudy. Let's dive into what it means to be truly native within the Salesforce ecosystem. At Flosum, we deliver a truly native DevOps solution, meaning we deliver the benefits of security, data integrity, ease of use, using the built-in capabilities that the Salesforce platform has to offer. In other words, when a solution is set to be native, it means that all of your interactions happen within your Salesforce environment. Flosum is built native to Salesforce because we use Salesforce's underlying security protocols and architecture. Other DevOps solutions create a backdoor into your environment, which leaves you open for security breaches and hacks. Secondly, when a solution is set to be native, it means that your data is never moved outside of the Salesforce platform and the Salesforce ecosystem. Other DevOps solutions typically will create copies of your data and store them in Amazon Web Services or Azure, moving your data outside the firewall of the contained Salesforce platform. Flosum is built into Salesforce and therefore never moves your data outside of Salesforce. This is super important. Lastly, a native platform is defined when your end users have the same experience that they would in a normal Salesforce environment. This is critical. The user interface is the same and there's no learning curve to understand a new platform. This is essential for streamlining DevOps and getting developer productivity and velocity up. Other DevOps solutions build their own UX, so not only do the developers have to understand the nuances of Salesforce, but they also have to be experts at yet another UX and platform. At Flosum, we are 110% native to Salesforce. We work inside the Salesforce environment. So again, what does it mean to be native? In short, we like to say that Flosum is built in, not bolted on. In order for a solution to be native, it has to use the same UI. So the end user's experience is intuitive. It has to maintain all the interactions within the Salesforce environment and not open a back door, subjecting your organization to data theft, breaches, and security problems. It has to keep the data inside of the Salesforce environment and not move it out to other cloud ecosystems where it will be vulnerable. Flosum is the leading end-to-end DevOps and data backup platform built 100% natively on Salesforce. Our mission is to enable technology leaders to manage their Salesforce cloud with confidence and empower developers to innovate. Enterprises around the world use the company's platform to accelerate digital transformation by making the release process fast, easy, and secure. This results in developer productivity and compliance.
Woo! That was amazing. That was amazing. Y'all, we just heard a little bit more from David, our head of product, and Alex, a little bit more around a Provar preview, what's coming up. We're going to continue this conversation with y'all. For alpha testing, look in the chat, expect more from us as well about how to get involved. You also heard as well about some of the exciting initiatives coming out from our relaunch with University of Provar on a brand new platform. Y'all, as someone who's super passionate about continuous learning, I cannot stress enough, if you want to stay competitive in today's job market, if you are a leader who is looking to learn about new and emerging technologies, or if you also want to continue to increase your own knowledge about what's going on when it comes to recommended practices in scaling your test automation, I highly recommend University of Provar. And also too, here at Provar, we are 110%, stealing that from Encore, one of my favorite new people at Flosum. We are 100% committed to our community. And so we're going to be delivering more and exciting new initiatives for y'all. So please, if you are a Provar customer or if you're watching this recording, know that there's a lot of exciting initiatives coming your way. You also heard a little bit more from our amazing friends over at Flosum, and we're going to have them in the Q&A, y'all. So drop your questions in. This is going to be a good conversation. Whew. Okay. Last conversation before we go into our Q&A, y'all. We have Mark Lampert from Applitools and Alex talking about what is visual validation with Applitools. And on top of that, they're going to do a quick run through. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about, well, you know what? I can't spoil it just yet. We have a big, exciting thing coming for our customers as well. So with that said, let's watch this recording. And then again, we're going to dive into a Q&A after this. Maestro, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Alex Sherwood here with Mark Lambert, the Vice President of Product Marketing from Applitools. We've invited Mark here today because Provar is planning an integration with the Applitools product for the very near future. And I've asked Mark to tell us a little bit about Applitools, give us a quick overview of visual validation, and introduce us to the Applitools Eyes product. I think you'll be surprised, I know I was, how much our company's test automation philosophies overlap, and I bet you're going to be really excited about what this integration is going to offer. In the discussions I've had with Mark, we found that even though we're looking at test automation world through very different lenses, it turns out that Applitools and Provar are hearing the same things from customers, partners in the market, namely that traditional test automation approaches are broken and can't keep up. Provar's approach, engineering a solution from the ground up for Salesforce to deliver unbreakable polymorphic tests, an intuitive test building experience, and end-to-end test coverage, goes a long way to solving many of the issues that you're seeing on this slide, but not all of them. Specifically, Provar is not well suited to visual validation testing, and that's where Applitools comes in.
Yeah, and Alex, as you say, as we've discussed, we're seeing the same things in the industry. It comes down to not enough time to create the tests, which obviously Provar's approach really kind of shortcuts a lot of that, but also insufficient test coverage of the overall user experience. So not the visual validation, not even just part of the primary test, but also running across all of the devices and the different form factors that you need, which ultimately means that we're doing manual testing, things are missed, and we get defects in production. So the kind of things that we're talking about are buttons being obscured by text, meaning you can't click on the button. That could be in the form of a transaction. It could be in the form of booking a restaurant, for example. We also see things where CSS updates break the layout. So here, sponsored content, which obviously would be a marketing, business-driven transaction, is obscured and you can't click the button, you can't even see it. Operating system updates, so iOS update from 13 to 14 changed the way that the UI defaults are set up. And here you can see that the background of the form is now transparent. So, where do you type what? The problems are actually really two. And the first one of those problems is that we're missing these visual defects. And what does that mean? Well, as I look at an image, what are the differences between two images? I've got a piece of UI that was my first version, and then I've got a second version that comes out. Now, you're looking at this image, you probably spotted 2 or 3 already. Let me save you some time. So here, looking at these images, we could probably identify some of these problems with a traditional pixel diffing process, introduce some fuzz factor thresholding so I could get rid of some of the rendering issues. But the thing is, your application isn't just an image. The application has context. If we start looking at this, for example, and two different versions of the same website, where are the differences here? And again, we've got a long form website, so you're going to have to really kind of pick it apart. Let's take a look at what that looks like with Applitools. And I'm actually going to go log into the platform. This is actually our homepage where you can create your free account. I'm just going to go ahead and log into mine. And I've got a number of examples here that we'll kind of step through a couple of them today. And here's the example that we were just looking at. So here, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the two images side by side. I'm applying a pixel-based testing approach here. So I'm looking at all of the changes across those pages. And there's a lot, right? There's a lot of things that have been highlighted. If we actually zoom in and toggle between the two pages, we can see that everything has been slightly shifted, okay? And this element displacement often happens as you introduce new elements into your web page. And here, this is where I can start to take advantage of one of the first pieces of visual AI and start to ignore those visual displacements within the page. And then once I do that, we'll step out and we'll actually see that a lot of the highlighted differences have gone away. If I step out to the full page now and I say, okay, where are the differences? You can see that they're really just in 3 primary areas.
So it looks like you got rid of north of, 90% of those errors.
Exactly. And that's one of the key things that visual AI enables us to do. So the core algorithms that are doing the analysis of the web page really kind of go way beyond a traditional approach. So you can filter down to looking at just the true problem. So here I can see that this is actually some text that's been updated as I toggle between the two. This is accepted. This is probably something that is an expected change. Here on the lower area, I can see that there's actually some change on this image. This is actually an animated image. So obviously when it was captured, 2 different parts in the video or the animation. So I can actually go ahead and here add a region that's going to not ignore the content, but rather check to make sure that there's an image always in this place. And again, this is something that visual AI really enables beyond the traditional approach to visual validation. I'm taking into account the structure of the page. I could actually go ahead and apply that across the entire page as well, and then zoom out a little bit. And then we can actually look and see where the visual differences are on the page now. We can see we've got 1 at the bottom. So let's go ahead and zoom into that problem. And when I compare and go back and forth, we can see, yep, indeed, the GitHub logo is now missing. So yep, this is a problem. Let's go ahead and actually say that this is a defect. I can select it and I say GitHub logo missing. I could create a defect and flag that this baseline is rejected. And then the ticket could be created within the dashboard, or it could go to something like a CA or a Jira. Now, that's a good example of a visual defect, but how does the visual user interface actually impact the functional behavior of a website? So here, I've actually got 2 versions of the same application. This is actually running on 2 different browsers. So here we can see we've got Chrome, and then over here we can see we've got Internet Explorer. And if I was to do a direct kind of pixel analysis, we'd actually see that they're completely re-rendered. There's a lot of little changes that really don't matter to the human eye. If I change to layout, we can see that actually by applying this particular algorithm, we can see that there's actually only 1 issue. It's in the bottom right here. And this is caused because the CSS has been interpreted differently between these 2 browsers. So Chrome is rendering it correctly, white text on a gradiated blue background. And the blue one on the right-hand side is Internet Explorer, not rendering it correctly. So a functional test would pass, but visually, obviously, it's not usable by the end user.
That's why I kind of like this example. The one on the IE side looks like the font color just changed, and so the text in the button would have disappeared. Provar wouldn't have picked that up. We would have passed this test, but at the end of the day, you really need to have something that the user can use. So this is where visual validation just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's exactly it. And really that's where, visual validation goes beyond just looking at at how the image is rendered, but thinking about the overall user experience. So this is really the first set of problems, but the second problem is to consider all of those different devices, all the different viewport resolutions. Responsive design really does become difficult to test and validate across all the different platforms and instances. And this is where Applitools has developed the ultrafast test cloud and our grid, which really gives us the ability to scale and run in a very different way to a traditional cross-browser testing solution. So here what we do is we capture the DOM as you're running through your functional test scenario on your primary use case, let's say Chrome, for example, and then we asynchronously render in parallel across all of the different devices without you having to rerun the functional test. And that's key from the point of view of test management, test setup, and what have you. And then the visual AI kicks in. Now, the visual AI kicks in not only from the point of view of the identification of visual defects, but also helping me remediate all of those issues. So here we can see, for example, there's a total of 76 test steps that need to be resolved and reviewed. And by applying the auto maintenance capability, I can take those 76 and in essence put them into 2 stacks of paper. So I now don't have to review all 76 issues, but I can just, by leveraging the visual AI, group the things into 2 piles and then zoom in to identify where the issues are and review. In essence, in this case, I'm reviewing 40 test steps by just looking at this one particular visual defect, which obviously is an issue. The logo has now actually disappeared. So these 2 things together really help us scale our functional test automation and get complete coverage. So Alex, do you want to talk about what the integration is going to look like?
Absolutely. So the super quick summary is add an Applitools step to a Provar test, run the validation in Applitools eyes, and get the results back. And here's what we have planned for phase 1 of the integration. You start by configuring a connection to Applitools. You create a test in Provar. You drag an Applitools step from the test palette. And when the test is executing in Provar, a screenshot will be sent automatically to Applitools. If it's the first image, that'll be the screenshot that's used for the baseline for comparing subsequent images. And when the test runs again, Provar captures another screenshot and uploads it to Applitools, which then does the visual validation. When the test is done executing, test results go to Provar, to the test log, in terms of either it's passed, failed, or unresolved. And also sent to the test log is a URL with a link to the Applitools detailed test results if you want to take a look at those. And that's pretty much it.
Let's bring it home by kind of highlighting these 3 things. So firstly, what we're looking at here is a complete visual regression through a single snapshot. So less assertions, less time creating and maintaining your functional tests because you are being able to validate the entire visual appearance, and the visual AI performs that analysis for us. I showed you a small set of the capabilities within the platform. Obviously, there's a lot more that we have available there. And one of the key things which we'll be adding in the future iterations of the integration is the ability to leverage that cross-browser testing approach, which really helps you accelerate cross-browser testing across a whole bunch of devices, which is becoming increasingly important for Salesforce or deployments.
Absolutely. If you're interested in getting a preview of the Provar Applitools integration, here's a URL to sign up for the Early Access program. We'll let you know when the preview is available and help you get set up to check it out. That's all for now. Thanks a lot to Mark for introducing us to Applitools, visual validation, and visual AI, and thanks everybody for joining.
Oh, this is exciting. Oh, we have our speakers here. Y'all, we learned a lot, not just in this past segment, but also too offline about Winter 22. John, thoughts?
My audio will work. I think it's a lot of exciting stuff. We've got a lot of really cool things coming down the pipe. The stuff that Dave was talking about, the stuff that Ankur was talking about, and even the last stuff we were seeing from Mark. There's just some really cool things that this Winter 22 release is really setting the stage for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree. And y'all, we have some amazing questions coming in as well in the chat. I want to make sure, though, first and foremost, we dive into Flosum. Ankur, that was a really, 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 really great high level about what Flosum has to offer. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about some of the other things that you have in your pipeline that we can expect?
Absolutely. So as Flosum is starting to grow, most of our innovation isn't really coming from Flosum. It's actually coming from our client base, which again is being grown organically. And so in terms of our pipeline of innovation, we have a lot of security, zero trust type offerings that are coming out in this space, which should be disruptive, again, driven by demand out of the field. We've also got a lot of other capabilities around data masking, encryption, things of that nature, with information warfare becoming more and more prevalent these days. Protecting the home fort is becoming more and more important. And then we've also got what I would consider to be just table stakes as our product matures. Around backup, recovery, things of that nature. So the product pipeline is actually pretty full. I'm very happy to say that we're very blessed in that our CEO is actually kind of a product dude. So
yeah,
he keeps things lively.
Yeah, and I think and I love that. And there was a question that came in from our chat. One of these questions was anonymous. It said, "So Ankur, are native apps generally more expensive?"
That's actually a really good question. You would tend to think that perhaps because they're on the Salesforce platform that they tend to be more expensive, but they're really not. So when we go in and look at the total economic impact that we've been able to have for our customers or replacing a competitor, the typical payback for us is less than 2 months. And so, while you may think, or there might be a perception out there that these applications are, that are natively built are more expensive, they truly aren't, because, most of your high availability, disaster recovery, all things like that are built into, what you're getting with the Force platform, number one. Number two, you don't really have as much of an overhead as you do with non-native apps in terms of keeping things secure, caring, feeding, and maintaining for the app. And the other difference with us is, since we're native, you get a lot of what we call the DORA, D-O-R-A, which is a DevOps metric. You get a lot of the telemetry and instrumentation that's already baked into our product because it's native versus having to purchase that separately. So, in short, that's a huge myth. I'm glad somebody asked that question that I'd love to bust. And, we actually prove that out, and we have, time and time again economically.
I love that. And I think one of the things I'd love to hear more about too, and if you're keen, drop your LinkedIn in the chat at some point. That would be awesome. And you can obviously continue to stay connected with Ankur. There's another question. Hello, Mark. Mark, for y'all that don't know, I have a deep love with Applitools. Shout out to Angie Jones. Mark, I'm so glad that you're here, and really excited about our upcoming integration. There was a quick question that dropped in here that I wanted to make sure we touch base. And again, as Alex mentioned, there is a blog coming out for early access for Provar customers. This is a question that came in, Mark. How do you validate dynamic data with Applitools?
So that's a very good question, and it's something which we really only touched upon very briefly in the recording there. Obviously, trying to condense everything into about 10 minutes.
It's hard.
So there's a couple of key elements to validating dynamic data as part of test automation, especially leveraging visual AI. So when you look at the visual comparisons, we have different match algorithms that the AI is using to determine when there isn't a visual defect. One of those that I touched on pretty extensively was the layout algorithm. So if I have dynamic data in the view, and that data is always changing, it becomes very difficult to validate all of that. So then, the layout algorithm is very good to ensure that, for example, if you've got a table or a chart, that it's in the right place, and it's rendered as an appropriate element in the page. When you're talking about charts, if you're talking about things like reports and what have you, which is obviously very extensive within Salesforce, what I typically recommend there is that you're validating with some pre-canned data so that you know that you've got, for example, your segment chart is displayed all with the correct segments and the correct colors. There, we can just natively support that with our visual AI algorithm because it's able to understand the elements of the chart itself and start to tell you if it's rendered incorrectly. It's actually one of our clients within the marketing intelligence space where they do a lot of visual analysis of their graphs and charts that are in their dashboards. I would also say, though, if you wanted to validate specific data values, so that I wanted to ensure that the value is 45, then you can do that visually if that number is always the same. But if it's changing based upon the day of the week or the time of the month or a number of transactions that are previously in the system, that's when you want to start leveraging functional validation with Provar to do the validation of the actual data. But when you're trying to get a view for the whole page, that's just way too complicated to do with lots of individual granular assertions. So I recommend a mixture of the two: visual validation for the broad and get everything, and then targeted data validation with Provar's data validation framework.
I love that. Yeah. And I mean, to quote one of our favorite industry leaders, Joe Conchiano, I always think it's about finding the right tools that will work with the techniques that you need to drive results for your business. But it's always about getting a combination of the tools. And that's why I really, really am a huge fan. I know we are here at Provar of y'all and what you're doing at Applitools. With that said, how's this fest, Mark?
It's very stylish, Tristan. Okay. That's better than the one that I have. I just have a boring gray vest. So yeah, I'm digging the Christmas vibe. I'm feeling very seasonal.
I appreciate that.
Matches the theme for sure.
Yes. We like to ask the hard-hitting questions here. I will though. There is another really important one. We learned a lot about what's coming up with Provar. We learned a lot about FACT. Samuel, how are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you.
Oh, well, you have a lot of fans here in the chat. The chat is on fire, Samuel. One question that came up that was upvoted here, I think this is an important question. So given everything that was discussed with David and with your conversation as well, one of the questions that came out was, will I need to rebuild my existing LWC test?
No, you don't have to. But you can, whenever we release this new FACT technology, you will be able to change or replace those steps. And one of the benefits is going to be much faster, and it will bring new features into it, but you don't have to. It will still work, whatever you have.
Awesome. That's super, super helpful. So I guess a follow-up question that they had here in the chat was, we love a live story, was, will the new FACT platform break my existing tests?
No. They will still work, and it's just a new step that you will be able to use. It's an opt-in, it's optional if you want to test a new technology. And definitely, if you're interested, if you have many line-aware components and you're interested into getting your hands on this technology, then reach out to us and be part of the alpha.
I love that. And we did drop information about the alpha in the chat, y'all. But for anyone who's watching this as well after this event, we'll be sure to drop more information in the comment section. There is a follow-up question over here for you, John.
Uh-oh.
So a lot of people have been loving University of Provar, and I know that we relaunched recently on a brand new platform. But some of our returning users want to know, what are some exciting new courses that are coming up?
So we've got a variety of things. One of the main things that we have coming down the pipe is it won't be ready until early next year, but we'll start kind of rolling them out piecemeal. We have a Provar Architect course certification track that will be kind of targeted at the where Provar Essentials and Provar Advanced are kind of getting your feet wet and then establishing kind of this is how you use the product, et cetera. The Provar Architect track is really then starting to look at the scenario based approach, right? What are the things that are how you would do something, when you would do something, where you would do something, with real world practical examples from both current use cases, some of our upcoming feature sets, et cetera. So we've got a lot of things along those lines coming down the pipe, and then we also have a lot of I don't want to spoil the surprise because there's a lot of things that are coming, but we've got some things specifically around some industry leaders within the test automation space, people that you definitely know and have heard of, that will be coming in and helping provide some of the strategic value, how to do things, when to do things, where to do things, not specifically from a Provar or Salesforce standpoint, but from an industry standpoint. So there's some really exciting stuff coming there.
I love that. And can I just say, I love this screen presence over here, y'all. You've got some good minds up in here. And a lot of leaders here are literally working day and night to deliver amazing results for y'all and your customers. I want to come back to Ankur. There's another question that got voted up in the chat. Ankur, so this question is, can you still get data in real time with non-native apps, or is there still a lag?
Oh, there's absolutely a lag. And so that's a big thing in terms of, the benefit of having a native app versus a non-native app. You get real-time data. Not only that, but typically with a non-native app, you're having to contend with Salesforce APIs, right? And so typically, in production, you're capped at how many API calls, you can make. And anytime you have to run APIs, there's lag. You have a maintenance overhead as well that you have to deal with. And so that's kind of the challenge that you get with non-native apps.
No, I really appreciate that too. And just so y'all know, we could do this conversation forever. These are amazing minds up here. I know, spoiler alert, we're running out of time here. So we do have one last question, but that said, the conversation has not stopped, Joe. We still have a networking session where you can connect with some of these amazing, amazing leaders, okay? So be sure to go into the networking tab after we wrap. But I wanted to ask one last quick question. Samuel.
Yeah, fire.
So Samuel, this was a question that got upvoted in our chat. How much of the Salesforce LWC library will be supported in the first release effect?
That's a good question. We looked into what are the components that mostly used, and we are targeting to supporting those. We won't support all of them, just the ones that we've identified as the most used. But definitely there will be some input into any new component that you would like us to support.
I love that. And lastly, Samuel, what does your t-shirt say?
It says, quality is everyone's responsibility, but there's a small e, so it's a double message.
Correct. We love that. We love that. And we're all about inclusive, collaborative ways that you can scale your Salesforce estimation practices, as well as connect with other leaders in our space. So with that said, we're going to go and dive into our networking tab. If you are watching this recording, because you could make this event live, no problem. We've got you sorted with all of the in the comment sections. You'll be able to see more of the resources. And for everyone who's watching live, we can't wait to network with you over in the networking session. So again, Samuel, Mark, Ankur, John, this was such a pleasure, and I will see you all over in networking. Take care for now, y'all. Bye.